It could be a scene out of Gone with the Wind. Instead, it's the back lot at Universal Studios on fire. Fanned by 50-mile-an-hour winds, 5 acres of the world's biggest and busiest movie back lot goes up in flames. Block after block of building facades used in thousands of movies burned to the ground. In all, an estimated 20% of the wooden facades were destroyed. Among the outdoor sets lost, New York Street, where the film Oscar, starring Sylvester Stallone, was currently shooting, gone. That set was used in the movies The Sting and Dick Tracy. Also lost, Courthouse Square, site of Back to the Future, and Brownstone Street. Universal executives say they believe fire insurance will cover the loss, which at this point has no dollar estimate. Studio executives here say they hope to start rebuilding the back lot, that part that was destroyed in last night's fire, as soon as possible. Now, while a lot of Hollywood history has been lost in that fire, the nice thing about the movie industry is this. The artist in it can simply recreate the illusion of it all. I'm Joe McMahon reporting live. Back to you in Hollywood.
All right, Joe. Thanks for that.
Thanks very much indeed. Remembering that fire, how vast it was, how fierce it was, you wouldn't think that they would be able to go on the next day in any kind of normal way, but we can tell you, in spite of all of that devastation, Universal Studios officials tell us that it is pretty much business as usual today for many of the operations on the lot. They're just going forward. As Charmaine Wilkerson reports to us, that includes the main tourist attraction there, and that's the studio tour, of course.
At first glance, it seemed like any other day at Universal Studios, where visitors gathered to take the first studio tour of the facility scheduled after the fire.
We were afraid that the studio weren't going to be open for the day. We were thinking about coming tomorrow instead, but we found out that they were open today.
But once tourists boarded the trams, it was clear some things would be different, like the damage to the backlot used for the filming of Back to the Future, damaged along with adjacent lots used for such movies as Dick Tracy and The Sting.
About 80% of the tour is, of course, operating, functional. The show must go on. The show will go on. Oh, the tree! Watch out for the tree!
But as the show goes on, one major attraction is still missing. The popular King Kong exhibit, which was not damaged, but which is housed in a building that was damaged in the blaze. The building has been closed temporarily for inspection. Meanwhile, tour operators have opened a new show on the lot to make up for the missing portion of the tour. While Universal Studios is a tourist attraction, it is first and foremost a working environment for film crews. And crews were reportedly already back at work today, some of them, including crews working on a movie starring John Travolta. Reporting from Universal Studios, Charmaine Wilkerson, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
That huge backlot fire last night, a fire that destroyed movie sets, scorched tour attractions, and created a very scary real-life drama. Laurel Erickson's at the fire scene now with the latest on the fire and its effects. Laurel?
Well, one of the big headlines today was that a man had been arrested, a Universal Studios security guard. Sheriff's deputies will not say what led them to arrest this man, what comments he may have made about last night's blaze. It was spectacular. 200 workers and tourists were evacuated, but this morning everything was back to business as usual. 2 exhibits closed down, but turnout by heavier than normal.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, we had a fire here on the lot last night.
The fire that ravaged Universal Studios' back lot had become a tourist attraction as the first morning tram rolled out. The fire destroyed 1 out of 5 backlot facades, flimsy wooden fronts that exploded into flames within moments. Gusting winds whipped up a firestorm that roared through the movie sets, creating eerie images flickering in the night like a film right out of the 1940s. Firefighting helicopters scooped up buckets of water from the studio's own Red Sea exhibit to put out the blaze.
We were there way before the firemen got there. It was wild. Flames were like 50 feet up in the air, you know, and a lot of these old cars, unfortunately, were already on fire when we got there.
Priceless antique cars had been used on different productions, including the new Sylvester Stallone movie, Oscar, being produced by Disney Studios. Shortly after dawn, as firefighters pulled out steel girders and rubble, hosing down still burning wood, sheriff's deputies arrested a Universal Studios security guard on suspicion of arson in the multi-million-dollar blaze. His name is Michael Houston, 40 years old.
He was apparently on duty at the time, and that he is a suspect in this case. His bail has just been enhanced to $1 million, and he'll be booked at Central Jail.
Universal Studios lost the sets where Back to the Future was filmed, the Dick Tracy Building, New York Street, and Brownstone Square. Even King Kong suffered damage.
We've lost the sets, ladies and gentlemen, but the area will live forever on film.
The firefighters did manage to save the precious film archives, and fire investigators say no one will know how much this fire has cost, a multi-million-dollar price tag, until they've talked to all of the different production companies, because it's not just the sets that were burned out. People have been put out of business, shut down for a while, and as we all know, a budget overrun can be very expensive in Hollywood. Laurel Erickson reporting live. Back to you.
All right, Laurel, thank you. Well, the fire failed to stop the show at Universal today. As Laurel suggested, the scene of last night's disaster became the park's newest attraction. Elizabeth Anderson has more on this.
When you took a picture of the destruction from the fire, what was your reaction to that?
I was just totally amazed.
Lee Starkey wasn't ready for this attraction. He was ready for killer sharks,
Watch out for the tree!
flash floods, even intergalactic aliens. But nothing compares with the real thing. Nothing.
They think it may be arson on top of it. It's just incredible that somebody would do this.
I thought it was horrible because I really wanted to see the King Kong exhibit.
A small portion of the back lot was actually affected by the fire.
Well, as they say, the show must go on, and the charcoal remains of a back lot suddenly got star billing.
It's sad because it's a part of movie history, and just within minutes it's gone.
Ellen Marsh only has to step outside her bedroom to see what's left of her view, Universal's back lot. The fire is gone, but her fears are not.
Well, I was worried that the flames might come up here and the hills would, be set on fire, and I was waiting to hear we would have to evacuate.
It wasn't that long ago that the people who lived in this neighborhood in the hills right above the back lot of Universal Studios felt pretty safe and secure. Not now. Now many of them are feeling vulnerable, especially when they know firsthand what a fire can do. Near Universal Studios, Elizabeth Anderson, Channel 4 News.
Sylvia Lopez reports.
It looked like so many other scenes that have been shot on the Universal lot. Flames leaping from windows everywhere. But this time, the flames were real and out of control. Narrow backlot streets and 50-mile-per-hour winds made the fire for a time impossible to fight. And the old wooden facades we have seen here for decades burned quickly.
They're just like kindling matchboxes that are ready to go up.
Firefighters were able to fight off flames that burned right up to Universal's vault, the studio's priceless film library. But several famous movie backdrops were reduced to bare frames. This morning, sheriff's deputies arrested 40-year-old Michael Houston of Tahunga, a security guard on the lot, and booked him for arson.
He was apparently on duty at the time, and that he is a suspect in this case. His bail has just been enhanced to $1 million.
When the smoke cleared this morning, the shock of what was lost finally sunk in.
I was appalled that something so beautiful in the set streets that have so much history could just be taken away like that.
Gone, the famous Back to the Future Square, Brownstone Street, and New York street sets. Backdrops for movies like Dick Tracy, The Sting, and To Kill a Mockingbird. But the King Kong attraction, originally reported destroyed in the fire, actually suffered only minor damage. Even though some of the studio was closed due to fire damage, the people on the day's first tour trams got an eyeful.
We've lost the sets, ladies and gentlemen, but the area will live forever on film.
It was pretty devastating. You feel a loss for all those things that got burned up and can't be replaced.
We planned this last week to come and half of it's gone, so it's quite sad.
Universal spokespeople say plans are already underway to rebuild the burned sets, even though they admit they're irreplaceable. In Universal City, Sylvia Lopez, Channel 2 Action News.
Here's NBC's Keith Morrison.
It was a real fire last night, enormous, a showstopper. But on the morning after, the tourists showed up as usual.
The show must go on.
And the nation's third most popular tourist attraction, a festival of make-believe, took their money. as usual.
I hope everybody has a camera with them today. We have a lot of great picture-taking opportunities on the tour. I can't help it. It makes me laugh today.
That anyone here could laugh today is a testament to make-believe. This was the place Michael J. Fox went Back to the Future last night, and today it's in the past, mostly.
You can see the classic courthouse from Back to the Future still stands.
And here was where Dick Tracy played pyrotechnics with the bad guys. A main street of sun-dried wood facades which had stood for decades and which last night burned down in minutes. The place where the sting was sprung, now gone.
About 80% of the tour is, of course, operating, functional.
But there was relief, too, because most of the historic backlot was saved. King Kong was singed but lives. The Psycho House is still spooky, intact. The fabulously valuable film vault unscathed. Today, one of the studio's own security guards was arrested and charged with starting the fire. And Universal people said they are glad it wasn't worse.
There are plans underway, I understand, to commence immediately as soon as the sheriff will let us into the area to rebuild.
And they will keep busy playing make-believe. Keith Morrison, NBC News, Hollywood.
It's not until we were driving home, it wasn't until we woke up this morning and saw what was left that you realize what makes Southern California and Los Angeles so historic happened right down there, and it's all gone.
There were the stairs that Diana Ross scrubbed in Lady Sings the Blues, gone. The drugstore from The Sting, gone. Sting Alley, gone. When I arrived this morning, I went down to the lot with one of the drivers, and I tell you, I just really stood there and I cried. I've been with the studio for 12 years, so it was like watching my hometown destroyed.
It all exists on film somewhere. All the images of these sets, they still exist, but I think we lost the ability to actually be there and see them, you know, in person.
Thank you. And one last story from our Channel 9 team on the coverage last night, that fire. It's not from a reporter, but from another important part of our news team, our photographers.
That's right. One of our photographers managed to get onto the lot last night, actually facing the flames. Lawrence Kolb was the only LA photographer who actually got on the lot while the fire was still raging.
And today we asked Lawrence to describe what he saw, what he felt from his unique perspective. Here's his account of facing the flames in his own words and with his own pictures.
And I looked down the street, and there's a wall of flames in this two-story building. I was like the only one there. It was funny because when I got there, the fire trucks were there, but the firemen, I think, had decided that was a lost cause, so they were working on some other structure. It was so intense and so hot, and so I just did what they paid me for. It wasn't even like a war zone. It was like a very good produced movie set, which it was, but it was actually burning. A valley of flames on this side, flames on this side, and flames in the background. And this one lonely fireman is just like kind of scurrying, and then he starts to walk. And I thought that the firemen were doing an excellent job. They were hustling their butts off trying to save, and they actually saved one of the structures. At one point I was thinking how visual all this was, and how in this business things have to be visual or glamorous, and I would consider that glamorous because that viewers turn in to see that stuff. And I was thinking how I was really happy that there weren't some charred bodies, you know, because the Baldwin Hills fire, which I was involved in, a couple of people were just lying out on the street, charred from the Baldwin Hills fire. And I was like I was really happy that I didn't see any of that around, and I didn't see any ambulance or medical type personnel. So I knew that there was you know, no casualties, and I was just thinking that I hope that they don't find some casualties.
Good work, Lawrence.
I'll say. Boy.
And we are happy to add that no, there were no casualties in last night's fire.
That report, a good reminder that without our skilled photographers, we'd really be doing radio here.
Absolutely.